Welcome to West Virginia Beer Roads, a podcast all about beer from a West Virginia perspective. I'm Erin McCoy, here with my podcast partner, Charles Bockway.
I think you'll agree, Aaron, that we're both quite excited to be in the location that we're in today to record this podcast. We've been meaning to get over to West Virginia's Eastern Panhandle since COVID days, but we just haven't made it. Well, that ends today as we're sitting down here at Abolitionist Ale Works in Charlestown, West Virginia, which is about a 5-hour drive from our home base. Abolitionist is a brewery that follows a bit of a different drummer, and it's pretty unique for our market. It produces beers with different methods and different equipment than your typical contemporary West Virginia brewery. And I'll have to say that we love it.
Charles, Abolitionist Ale Works is a place I've been dying to visit, but just haven't had the chance. So I'm very happy we could be here today with brewery co-owner and head brewer, Mike Vance. Mike, welcome back to West Virginia Beer Roads in person this time.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for coming up.
Well, Mike, it's taken us a couple of years to get over here, but I'm really looking forward to talking with you today on the podcast. How have things been going for you guys at Abolitionist Ale Works?
It's been good. I think after the pandemic, we've had struggles, but, there's positives with that. I feel we had to get out of our comfort zone. As you see all the beer labels and can in my hand. So I think a lot of good things have happened. I've always just wanted to have like this small town kind of feel in my brew pub. So, I still feel that here, and I'm really, really appreciative of that.
Mike, before we get into this podcast, I can see you have some beer out for us to sample today. So I would like for you to please introduce that.
Well, I picked Beardy Mars. I figured 'tis the season for that. I wanted to just show this one because we did talk about interpretation of different styles. And, I like to show my interpretation of what I think the style should be. Something a little bit more easy drinking, going into spring, kind of like a light Beardy Guard.
Yeah, but I think for a lot of our listeners that may not be familiar with this, the March beer style, could you explain a little bit how it's made and what's in it?
Yeah, it's definitely a style you don't see made much. So I did one last year. I did with lemon zest and rose hips. This year I decided just to keep it regular, just straightforward. It's definitely a style that has a lot of different interpretations. It's an old style, French style, that was brought back, and they started brewing it more stronger, like 6%. And obviously, American brewers have kind of put their own spin on it. But you don't see too many breweries actually doing it. So,
yeah. Is there any brewery in particular that you kind of patterned this or inspired you to make this style?
No, I mean, not really. I would try like Jolly Pumpkin's interpretation of it, which is a little bit more funkier and sour. This one you get a little bit more barrel character, a little bit oak, but then you get that kind of like fruity, almost citrusness, almost kind of more a fresher. So really, it's pretty much like brewed in winter and just kind of in the barrel for a couple months. So like brewed in January, and then I'm usually kegging it by March.
It's got some fantastic color.
Yeah, so it's kind of a quick turnaround, something that's like easy, more approachable, which I feel the style should be. Being a spring beer. So, and I figured, the last week of March is always good to get that out.
Yeah, here we are in the last week of March recording this podcast. Well, Mike, people from other places may not realize that little West Virginia is so spread out into sort of diverse sections, And I mean, Aaron and I live over in Charlestown, West Virginia area. Abolitionist is over here in Charlestown, West Virginia. It's about almost a 5-hour drive, from where we live. So, you've spent a good bit of time now here in Charlestown brewing at Abolitionist, and I wonder if you could just describe for our listeners what the local beer market's like over here in the Eastern Panhandle of West Virginia.
Yeah, Charlestown, that's 2 words. So a lot of people put it one word. Even some of the signs, the road signs coming from Shepherdstown, it's 1 word. So But I mean, I feel like the beer market definitely here is definitely more neglected than your guys' area, definitely for West Virginia beers. There's been a few times where I see people like, well, we can't get their beer, and and for me, it's just like, well, we can't get probably 75% of the beer that you guys get. I mean, we can't get Weathered Ground, we can't get Bad Shepherd. I mean, unless I drive there and pick it up, or meet somewhere.
Sure. Well, I mean, most parts of the world, except for larger breweries, beer is local.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, really. You need to travel sometimes to go get the beer that's different because...
going back to that opening question, that's kind of what I wanted. I wanted something local, for my hometown.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to bring it back home because I felt like this area needed it.
Yeah. But I mean, I know you're right next to Loudoun County, Virginia, and that's a huge... beer market these days, and Northern Virginia across the board. Even Maryland, I guess, has grown a lot in recent years in breweries, and you're sitting here right nestled in between all those places.
Virginia's been booming for years, and so that's been kind of the rough part because which I think I've talked about before is we're not really in the West Virginia market, and we're not in this booming Virginia market, so we're kind of stuck in the middle,
in between.
And for me, even starting, I kind of wanted to do something different. Because I felt like I had to stand out with the Maryland, Virginia breweries, and
well, this part of West Virginia is officially part of the Washington D.C. metro area. So, talk about the influence of the metro market on the beers that you decide to brew.
Yeah, so probably when I opened, it's definitely the hazy boom was going on, and Northern Virginia, that's pretty much almost all you can get, or the real sweet sours. So, I kind of wanted it to, do it a different way and not just do it a different way. It's kind of the way I like to do it and kind of the way I like to brew. So, I just kind of just pretty much did it the way I wanted to do it. And I think it worked out. I mean, I did probably weed out those hazy crowd probably a little too early. But yeah, you start seeing the shift in the beer scene. The West Coast, the Pale Ales, the American Stouts. You can even find American Stout now. There for a while, you couldn't find anything but a 13% Imperial Stout. But the light beers are definitely making a comeback. But in this area, that's really what it was the hazy IPAs. And we took a vacation up to Portland, Maine, and I was kind of blown away about almost all the breweries there had the variety, a lot of mixed culture beers. And everything, they had the variety, what I always kind of wanted to do, and it wasn't just 10 hazies on tap.
Right.
Yeah.
So they had a little bit of everything. They actually had IPAs was probably the least of what we found. We found a lot of the farmhouse beers, just a bunch of different style beers, which I thought was really cool compared to Northern Virginia.
And that's kind of what you've then tried to do here in Charlestown, West Virginia, right?
Well, Mike, I know you get out to the local beer festivals in other parts of the state, and you're quite familiar with the Morgantown, West Virginia area from having worked a number of years at Morgantown Brewing. I'm curious, how would you describe the differences between what people like to drink over here and how that might differ from market preferences in other parts of West Virginia that you get to?
Yeah, it's totally different. The Charlestown, Huntington area, I think is different than Morgantown. I think in Morgantown the market's probably a little bit more fickle, because you got a lot of the students.
Right.
In Huntington, I feel like they're the only ones that want the funky stuff, and so they've kind of embraced me a lot because I would brew those type of beers, and around here, I definitely didn't sell as much. We even we actually sold. Because we have a license in Maryland, we can actually self-distribute over in Maryland. Oh. And still, over there, they kind of just want, IPAs and, easy drinking stuff. So that's what a lot of people want. But when I see what, Morgantown Brewing Company is doing now with, with the sours, the kind of and I feel like they're marketing to the school.
I agree.
Or the students more the
Sure.
And I think that's the way to go. And I think they've made a nice little niche there, even though that's not really my style. But I think it's a nice little niche that they did. But down definitely the Charleston, Huntington area, I think is the best beer area in West Virginia, hands down.
Well, I know Jeff McKay down at Summit Beer Station in Huntington is certainly a fan of your beers.
Yeah, he's the one that that really started a lot of these different beers. I think people in Huntington, they want that variety. They want those different beers because he introduced them to that, all those funky beers. And at the time, back then, it was like that was like the hotness, the barrel aged like
Right.
sours, funky stuff.
Right.
So obviously that's all changing. So yeah, I think he's done that, and you see, other people, other places around that area kind of open more of those beer bars, which I think it's amazing what he's done with a beer bar without food.
Yes.
I think now he maybe has some food offerings, but
Very little, yeah.
yeah. But I just feel like it's hard to have a beer bar without like food offerings,
Right.
I agree.
or options.
Yeah. Well, we don't really see sales figures, certainly from Abolitionist Ale Works or any of the small breweries in the state, but I'd just like to really ask you, how have things recovered from the pandemic here? I mean, you're now a couple years past the worst of pandemic anyway, and some places have been seeing a lot of growth. Other places have still struggled a little bit. I'm just kind of curious, what the effect's been here on your sales.
Oh, I mean, yeah, we've definitely seen sales drop. The first 2 years, were really good, and it really kind of goes back to everything. Like people like what's new. So when
Sure.
you're new, and I see a lot of these new breweries opening up, and they're getting really busy, and then they
Falls off.
and they upgrade or expand a little too quick, and then they can't really keep up with it. So I mean, I didn't really want to do that. I kind of wanted to keep it small, and so we can kind of go in any direction we want. We're not worried about making a loan payment every month, because we've pretty much had everything paid off the first 6 months.
Yeah,
So,
that's got to be a nice feeling that you can
Yeah.
weather upturns and downturns,
Yeah.
whichever way the market goes.
and then my brother purchased the building, so we own the building, and so that helped us out a lot. So really, our only liability when everything was shut down was pretty much our employees. We wanted to make sure they were taken care of.
Sure.
Yeah, so I know you sell, of course, probably most of your production comes right through your own brew pub here in Charlestown, and but I think you have been doing a little bit more distribution. Could you talk a little bit about how that's going for you?
Yeah, I mean, this year I really haven't done much, but last year I probably because once the pandemic hit and like draft stopped flowing, because that was our bread and butter, was draft beer. That's what we made all our money from. We barely sold anything. We sold some kegs here and there. Obviously, no package stuff, no cans. Maybe a bottle here and there. Maybe I would have like one bottle release a year, and and so when the draft stopped flowing, that was what was difficult. But last year I actually we sold more kegs, distributed more kegs than we did in 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. So 22 we sold the most kegs.
So it really recovered for you.
Yeah, but I actually took more trips down to the Huntington area, so that helped out. And for me, that was always kind of a chore, because you know how long that drive is.
Yes.
Oh my,
It's a lot of
yes.
work, but I kind of like, well, it's fun. I can go down there, visit some cool places, drink
Sure.
some good beer, eat some good food. So I've been kind of like thinking of it as like a little mini vacation. So I took more trips down there last year, and so yeah, we did sell a little bit more.
Well, let's talk about what you're seeing in your tap room with differences in sales by beer style. What are you selling the most of overall right now?
Oh man, probably the Pilsner. The Pilsner is probably the one that probably sells the most. Obviously the hoppy beers, but when I first started, I only pretty much brewed the Alpha Male, and that was it.
And that's an IPA.
Yes, and then I did like a session IPA, and I did like other hoppy style beers, but just not with like the IPA name. But now I'm brewing a little bit more IPAs, so all the IPAs move a little slower. But like the Pils, the Pils is probably the one that sells the most. And then like cans, the Imperial Stouts still move really good.
Do you see the IPA boom ever tailing off?
I don't think so, but you definitely see, these more like regular simple beers, making a comeback. Definitely, the lighter beers.
So those are the most significant changes in style preferences that you've seen here at your tap room.
Yeah. So really, even going back from the beginning, hoppy beers and light drinkings were the top two, so, but you're definitely seeing the light drinking definitely, overtaking the hoppy. I think it's true. I think some people are burnt out from the hops. And, I think the days of, dumping 44-pound bags and a barrel of beer, bags of hops into a barrel of beer, I think those are, you're not going to see as much as that as you used to. I think people are getting a little burnt out by the really heavy hops. I think balance is going to come back. Well, I wouldn't say come back. I think it's always been there.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, like the real dry hop beers, like the hazy IPAs, they're balanced with sweetness. So to balance all those hops, you got that sweetness to balance it. So, so usually, the West Coast, you got drier, but, you got that bitterness. So I don't know. I guess to me, the older I get, the more I want that bitterness, and I want that more bitter bite. So, to me, it still has a malt backbone. It's just not, all that sugar. So you actually get a little bit of the hop flavor and the malt backbone with, a little, definitely a bigger bitter back end, which I feel like that's coming back.
Well, you've always been an advocate of more wild or natural fermented beer styles and sour beer styles. How are those styles going for you today?
Those are probably the slowest selling. But I still make them. That's kind of what I like the most. And if I'm going to keep doing this, I want to still I don't know. I enjoy the something about the even the barrel fermentation. Adding like the mixed cultures. Kind of taking that leap of faith, and giving it time, let it develop instead of just giving up on something real quick. Because I know some brewers will not given enough time, and it's like, all right, let's just dump this. But sometimes you give something some time, it can be really beautiful.
Yeah, I think you've been one of the leading brewers in our state with those techniques. So there haven't been a ton of others who certainly have taken it as seriously as you have with the wild fermentations and things.
Yeah. So with the barrel beers, I think there's, I guess going back to the balance thing where I think a lot of people think that just because it's like, a farmhouse or a barrel-aged beer that it has to be puckering sour. So you have this group of people that want like something really sour, and then you want somebody who doesn't want something really sour. So I'll have people that will even try the West Funk Virginia, like, oh, I was expecting it to be more sour.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I try to be balanced with the acidity. I don't want to just something just sour for the sake of being sour. It's like just like eating hot wings. I want some flavor in there. I don't want something just hot for the sake of being hot.
Yeah. So it's Brettanomyces fermentation as well as the lactobacillus and the pediococcus that can make beer's more sour up front. Yeah.
So that with some O2 exposure, and like even like all my imperial stouts, they're all barrel fermented. So that's I think something a lot of people don't realize.
Let me jump in here, Mike, because I'm always impressed. I walk into your little brewery area and I see that you are actually fermenting a lot of your beers right in the barrels, these wooden barrels and foeders and things, and which is not all that common in small brewers, certainly around our area.
Yeah, it's definitely makes it a little bit more difficult. But when I started, I only started with like a few like plastic tanks and then a bunch of oak barrels, and so that's I fermented in all of them, and so. And I don't know. I just something about it. I just like the art of the fermentation with oak. When it comes to wine, even like whiskeys, which they're obviously not fermented in the barrels, but
yeah.
But like wines can be fermented in their barrels. They do the aging, so and when it comes to like Brettanomyces, I feel like Brettanomyces was kind of that, that yeast that like. that a lot of people kind of pushed to the side and kind of like, demonized.
Yeah, they didn't want it. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's kind of when the industry started taking over, and I would say a long time ago, and they found out ways to make the beer a little bit more consistent, and that's why a lot of people don't use the Brettanomyces, because it's not consistent. It's one batch, you're going to get these beautiful like tropical fruit flavors, and the next batch, you might get a lot of medicinal and like barnyard,
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah.
so they're different. And I've had some fun moments with customers. So I had this really Pale the Funky Hopu Sapien Bright IPA. This one batch was like so funky, and I was like, man, I don't know if I can serve this. And so I bring it home to my wife, and she's just like, ooh, this is really good. Or like, at first she was like, well, I don't know. And then the next day she's like, hey, can you bring more of that home?
So she really liked it.
Yeah. So and then so I put it on tap, and the customer comes in. One girl's drinking, and the guy was like, I can't drink that. She's like, just try it. And the guy tries it. He's like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I might just dump that batch. And the next day, the guy comes in. The same guy comes back in. He's like, man, I've been thinking about that all day. I want one of those. So I thought that and the wife did the same thing.
That's
so
funny. So you need
it's when
to think about it.
Yeah, it's like once you get used to some of those flavors, like you do kind of start craving it. It's like, that funky cheese. You ever had that really funky like goat
yeah.
cheese?
Oh, yes.
Where you're like, oh, I don't know if I can eat this, but you just keep
And
going
you're
back
like,
to
yes,
it.
it's really good.
It's crazy. You just keep going back to it. So I think some of those beers are similar to that.
Well, yeah, it's a brewers like you who dabble in the dark arts. You have to be willing and to accept those variations and embrace them.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think flaws are beautiful, and I think we live in a society where, we teach that flaws are not beautiful, and for me, I think flaws are beautiful.
I agree. So do you see these wild or natural fermented beer styles and sour beer styles trending either up or down?
Yeah, they're definitely trending down. I mean, I think a lot of breweries are like getting rid of their sour programs. That's happening. They don't sell. They just bottleneck and I, for me, I've been trying to just kind of focus just on the West Funk in Virginia, which I don't know, that's something I've always kind of liked. Because when I started, I was like, you know what, I kind of wanted to also do that to say like, hey, we're in West Virginia, we can do beers differently here too.
Sure.
And it was kind of like, like, hey,
Yeah, and for people that haven't had West Funk in Virginia, explain a little bit about that. And also, I know you have a series of variants of that style now, or of that beer.
So that was kind of, the name was like on, WVU, kids would wear the shirt. And so I kind of wanted to take like a negative and turn it into a positive. And it just seemed fitting for something with a wild West Virginia yeast that's funky. And it just seemed fitting. So I kind of ran with it, and, it's still kind of, so we have the t-shirts, cans. So for the cans, I have, because once the pandemic started, I was pretty much like, we were pretty much like, all right, let's get a label of everything, And I think I remember listening to the Weather Ground interview, and he pretty much said the same thing. It's like, that's what you had to do. It's like, what beers do we have in inventory? Let's get a label of all of them. And so, the West Virginia ones were easy. We just slapped, state of West Virginia, West Funk Virginia logo on it, and different colors and fruits. So peach lavender, basil mango. Ooh, we just actually went home and drank the blackberry sage, and that beer is beautiful, I think. So
Hey, so do you think you could bring out one of those for us to try?
Okay.
Take your pick, and then let you describe it for us.
I brought out the blackberry sage, West Funk Virginia blackberry sage, and this is one of my favorite flavor combinations. So I usually like to put this out during Funksgiving, which was that first year we were open. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving fell on my birthday, and I was like, hey, it's my birthday. I'm gonna brew what I want to. I'm gonna put on what I want to, and so we did the Funksgiving where I put on a bunch of funky beers, and over the years it kind of stuck, and we do it every year. And I kind of want to incorporate more like food type beers, so like blackberry sage. I did the pear sage, saison, which is one of my favorites. So I just think this works really good with the West Funk in Virginia, which is a barrel-aged American wild ale. You get that little acidity that I think helps the sage pop a little more. But the sage is still pretty balanced. It's not over the top. And then, the blackberries, add a little bit of that, berry sweetness. And, because like compared to like raspberries are a little bit more tart. Blackberry has a little bit more like sweetness to it.
It's got some great aroma.
Yeah. So yeah, one of my wife's favorites too. So
Yeah, I mean the balance here between the fruit touch in there as well as that sage that's to me a little in the background, and when you swallow this and it comes up into your nose, you get a little of that sage touch, but it's not at all overpowering.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think those kinds of those sagey things could be.
yeah, and from the beginning, I kind of wanted to make all these beers kind of approachable, which I think when people read it, they get a little scared. They're like, "Wow, why is there lavender in this?" Which you can't expect everybody to like lavender in a beer.
Sure.
So I think that's why a lot of people think I'm weird, because I like lavender in a beer, but like sage, like basil, rosemary, I think even when you do it, they should still be approachable.
And just a reminder, you're listening to the West Virginia Beer Roads podcast. I'm Charles Bachway, along with co-host Aaron McCoy, and our guest today is Mike Vance, head brewer and co-owner at Abolitionist Ale Works in Charlestown, West Virginia. So to move this interview along, Mike, I'd like to hear you address a topic that we hear a lot about down in Charlestown, West Virginia, especially when the legislature's in town. And they've just, not too long ago, weeks ago, wrapped up the session for this year, the legislative session. There's a lot of state laws and regulations that we have to deal with in operating a brewery. And just kind of get your take, the current take, 2023. Do you have any thoughts on things that need fixed or issues that come from the legislation or the regulations of beer?
Not really. I mean, I try to stay out of the politics, and keep my mouth shut. Obviously, after a few blackberry sage,
Right.
It'll be
Little
probably be a
liquid courage.
different story. But I mean, I feel like we're almost there. You're starting to see all these beers come in, so I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, it goes back to I remember they were fighting, about changing stuff back when I was at Morgantown Brewing Company and the whole the growler thing. And I remember we ended up having to like seal the growlers and write the thing, and we didn't want to do that. And because it was more work for us. But now I look at it, it does make the growlers look a little bit more presentable. And because at first, I wanted to be hard-headed. I'm just going to use tape. And then when I actually did it right, I was like, this does look a lot better. So it does. So there's that. I mean, yeah, there's nothing I can really think of. Honestly, it'd be nice if we could do contract brewing. So that's something that we dabbled before, and we got the letter said we can't do that anymore. Which our neighbors right here in Maryland and Virginia, they can do it.
Yeah.
They can easily get. I know the Virginia breweries are getting beer from the Maryland breweries. And
Yeah, I think it's probably something that you're much more aware of here in the Panhandle, right between Maryland and Virginia. Both have thriving local beer markets in this region, and you're going to see those comparisons. And at times, I'm sure you, more so than folks where I live, will notice the issues that come. That you're not on an even keel, maybe always.
Yeah, so it was funny when I went to Virginia Beach last summer, and we were at this. I forgot what the place was called. But as soon as we got up there ordering a drink, the guy was like, "Oh, I guess it came that we own a brewery." He was like, "Oh, I'm the lawyer for the Virginia craft brewers, and he's the one who got the contract brewing pass for all them." He's like, "Call me up," and so I do remember that, and I think I still have his card somewhere.
That's interesting.
But yeah, he said because Virginia breweries weren't able to do that a few years ago, and these laws have recently been passed in the last decade. So. The laws have been definitely more friendlier in Virginia going forward, and you can see, the boost it's given to the economy over there. So,
let's go beyond legislation and things like that, though. You run a very small brewery here, and which is pretty typical in our part of the world in West Virginia. A lot of small breweries that have probably issues in common with other small breweries anywhere. And I was just kind of curious, what are some of the things, though, here that are your largest challenges in keeping things moving ahead? I don't know if it would be, the grain orders, hops, brewing schedules. Just hit a few of those.
Yeah, this location, in this small town, this little downtown area, historic downtown area. I mean, it's just hard to get freight orders in, and that's probably the biggest challenge. It's very stressful every time I order a pallet. It's pallet anything, especially a pallet of a ton of grain. There's times that where I've had to meet them 2 blocks down the road with my pickup truck, so like I'm hauling it twice, and so that's probably the worst around here in our area.
And I think that a lot of people don't recognize, I mean, this is a small business, so it has a lot of the issues in common with any small business, the kind of challenges you have with a small group of people that run it. And there's things that, because it's a fairly new industry still, and certainly when you are the first brewery in a town like you were, I think, people don't know, what it's about and all the challenges, and they may think, oh, it's just a fun place to be and to run, but there are a lot of every kind of issue that, including like maybe working with local government. And I guess how have your relations been here in Charlestown with the city and county folks?
Yeah, they've been good from the beginning. I know they wanted to bring a brewery in here, and we didn't have any problems. Honestly, I feel like the TTB process, the state process, and then dealing with the town, that it wasn't as difficult as I imagined it would be.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's positive.
Obviously, I thought the TTB was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. I mean, obviously, it took its time, but we put it in early. While we were still kind of like building. We were proactive about it. And I think that helped.
And the TTB is the federal regulatory agency that governs brewing.
Yeah, and then as soon as we got that, the state came here and took a look, and then issued a license right away. So it was easier than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, we definitely submitted everything ahead of time.
Well in advance.
And gave ourselves time.
Yeah. Well, do you have any big changes or additions already in the works here at Abolitionist Ale Works?
No, not currently at this location. A few years ago, before 2020, or right around that time, my brother was looking to open another location, tap room, ale house, and obviously that fell through when everything hit the fan. But I think that's the way to go. Another location, another tap house, kind of what like Short Story's doing. I haven't been to their new Charlestown location, but I did go to the Deep Creek, and I think that's the way to go. That business model.
I think that's a pretty popular business model.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we have now, even in our small West Virginia market overall, we have a number of our breweries that have, they have their main brewery, and then they're supplying other tap rooms or restaurants that they own in different areas of the state. And that does seem to be something that I've seen a lot in North Carolina, where it's also legal, and it just seems like a solid way. I think people find that's maybe for them at least more profitable than just going into big time distribution.
Yeah, you got to think if you already have your location, your brewery, instead of opening another brewery, you just deliver your
Supply
kegs
your tap room,
or even where you can distribute to your own outlets. You don't have to. You're not using a distributor, at least sometimes in West Virginia. That's okay, and which means that you get more of the profit, I would think.
Yeah. So I think that's the way to go. So I don't know how it does. I know Short Stories in Maryland, and then Mountain State has the location in Deep Creek too. So I don't know if they have to go through a distributor for that.
They do from out of state. Yeah, they would.
Because I know us here, we can self-distribute in Maryland. But I think if it's a certain amount, like probably what they're bringing over.
Yeah, well, that's true. I don't know I don't know the Maryland laws, and I shouldn't speak out of school here. But yeah, there might be a situation where they wouldn't. Maybe they could self-distribute too. I know Screech Owl has a distributor in Maryland, and of course they don't have an outlet in Maryland, so. I don't. Yeah, I'm maybe getting that confused. You may not have to have. You could go direct.
Yeah, so we have a license in Maryland, and we can self-distribute in Maryland. But I think after you sell a certain amount, then I think you might have to go with a distributor.
Right.
I'm not too sure, so quote me on that. But I think with our name and our brand, I think the Maryland area around here could be a good location. Obviously, with the Abolitionist John Brown kind of. So I think it could work in the Maryland area around here.
Well, Mike, it's time to pull out your crystal ball and let's look into the future. What is your prediction of the next popular beer style explosion?
Well, I mean, I think the Crispies, the Crispy Boys are already back. And and then 10 years from now, the milkshake will probably be back.
Oh, yeah,
Or,
yeah.
Yeah, you don't. I think the Crispy Boys. I mean, we're talking the lagers and pilsners.
Yeah,
that they are nationally, you see, but still they're not dominating the craft market. They're not the IPAs. They're coming up, and I think in our market, at least in West Virginia, we're just starting to really edge into that.
Yeah.
From at least from most of our brewers.
Well, I think on the craft side of it, I think it's a lot of these breweries can't make enough of it to bring the price point down.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the issue. Is so nobody really wants to pay $20 for a 4-pack of Pilsner when they can get another Pilsner on the shelf, probably a 12-pack for the same price.
Yeah, and for reasons being that for instance, making a good Pilsner or even a lot of lagers, you've got to lager them for a number of weeks, a lot longer than you do an ale, so that the turnaround time, it's tying up tanks, and a lot of small brewers don't have that luxury to tie up tanks for very long. That's why they just want to make quick turnaround beers like most of the ale styles.
Yeah, the IPAs. That's why I think IPAs are the most popular, because brewers can push those out in a week, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And
Well, what do you think of seltzers or the non-alcoholic beers? Are they really beer?
I mean, I don't think they're beer, but there's definitely a market for it. But you already see the seltzer market's already, crashing.
Yeah.
I guess crashing, or the bubbles
Falling
bursting.
off.
Yeah.
Falling off, I would think.
So it's just like Zima. I mean, Zima had its time, and and that came back. And what was that, like 20 years ago?
Yes.
30 years
Oh,
ago?
yeah.
I
30 years
remember
ago.
that well. Yeah.
Yeah, so 30 years ago, and then 30 years later. And it's gonna fall off, and then 30 years later, it's gonna come back.
Sure.
And
Cyclical.
so it's pretty much what Zima was. But
Have you dabbled in any of these more different non-beer styles?
No, I mean, I focus on the beer. We do get the seltzers from Parkersburg.
Okay.
Oh,
So
okay.
we sell those in those cans.
How-
And that's Parkersburg Brewing in Parkersburg, West Virginia.
So we sell those, and they do pretty good. So we want to have an offering for everybody. So we do a cider.
Sure,
We have the cider from Malice and Winchester, which is right down the road. And then we offer wine. So, I mean, I let the, I don't know. I don't know if I ever want to do a seltzer. I don't know. I mean, maybe. I'm not gonna say
Never say never.
Yep.
Well, Mike, before we wrap up this podcast, let's talk about something maybe a little humorous or something on the lighter side. Are there any anecdotes about the brewery or its customers that you could share with our listeners today?
Yeah, I don't know. So I guess that's a question I never really thought about. I guess, I mean, I liked the funky stuff, and I don't know. I had a couple stories. So pretty much, I bring everything on to my wife, and when my wife likes it, I put it on. So she's pretty much my guinea pig.
That's a good job to have.
Yeah, and she's the alpha male too. So
Yeah.
But now all she drinks is the funky stuff. So she doesn't even want the regular IPAs
Well,
anymore.
palates change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I should add here that Erin and I enjoyed visiting with her
Yes,
yesterday
very much
evening.
so. Yes, we certainly did.
One more thing, Mike, before we get out of here, maybe a little promo for all you guys do at Abolitionist. I mean, it's not just beer here. You have food, you have lodging. What can folks who have not yet been here expect to find?
Oh, almost anything, any style. I think I don't know, any style they're into. Like, so if you're not into the IPAs, you're going to find something you want here. If you want to find something different, that's what I noticed at the beginning was, I would do like one keg of, like, say, strawberry peppercorn, strawberry basil, peach this, something, and they would sell really quick. So I do notice there's definitely that change going back for just regular beer and not so complicated. But I still offer a lot of that stuff. So if you want to come in and try something new, and that's what I like to see when I go to a place. I like to try something different and see that not just the regular. I mean, sometimes I just want like a Pilsner or
Oh, yeah.
something light.
Yeah.
But I like
variety.
I like to see that places are trying something different.
Sure.
Yeah, so talk about your food menu.
Yeah, we just do the flatbread pizzas, and I tried to keep it simple. I wanted to have like a simple offering. With the beer, because I would go to Northern Virginia. We'd go to these brew pubs, and I wouldn't even call them brew pubs. They're just breweries that,
Yeah.
and most of them don't even have food. You're lucky if they have a food truck. Weekends they'll have a food truck.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to have a real food offering, and
That pickle
real food
pizza is
option.
delicious.
Yeah, that worked out pretty good.
Yeah.
I like that one too.
Well, our group here this weekend took over your Airbnb upstairs over the brewery. Tell us a little about that and how people can find it.
Yeah, that it's on Airbnb. Go to Airbnb, search Charlestown, it'll pop up. My brother also rents out a house up on the mountain, block from my house.
So you have the house. How many units are here in this building if you want to stay upstairs over the brewery?
He has 5 here, which I'm not sure if they're all available right now. Sometimes some might go in long-term leases.
Long-term, sure.
And he has a house up on the mountain, which is, it has 2 units, the upstairs and the downstairs. And I think it's it's great for people that, want to come up from Huntington. I know it's a
Yeah.
long drive, so we got rooms here. So that's really what I wanted. I wanted a place where, people come in and experience the beer, and not just, grabbing a 6-pack from the store. You come in here, experience the beer and the options, and that's kind of what I wanted.
A safe option too, because if you sit at the bar a little while too long, you can always just stumble back upstairs to your
Right.
bed.
And I always wanted to get the room that has the deck overlooking the patio.
Yeah.
I haven't
In the
stayed
back.
there yet, but that's one of my life goals.
I think
Is
that
to
might
send that
be room 201 or something.
Yeah, I think that's the one right next to the one you
At
guys
the
stayed
top
in.
of the stairs.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for being on this episode of West Virginia Beer Roads here again in person. I'm so happy that we were able to come and actually do this in person here at Abolitionist Ale Works. So thank you so much, and we wish you the best of luck going forward.
Yeah, thank you guys for making the trip up. So good luck on the trip back. It's definitely a hard commute, but
It was worth it.
yeah.
Absolutely. This brings us to the close of another podcast. Remember, you can subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast host. Thank you for listening to West Virginia Beer Roads.
West Virginia Beer Roads is a production of BrilliantStream.com.